Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel where we review anything and everything. And I completely cannot have these items in frame, which is why I'm getting so much extra into the frame that I don't want to get into the frame. But this video today is going to be a comparison between my only UCS Lego Star Wars sets. One is a off-brand or mock build slash from a different company, and the other one is official Lego. So it's the only two that I have. So what's interesting about this comparison video is that it not only is it comparing two different Lego spaceships, Star Wars spaceships, but it's also kind of comparing the two different worlds of official Lego versus off brands or third-party brands, which is not necessarily the intention of the video, but that kind of comes into play in its own right, just off the fact that, you know, the Stinger Mantis in particular is a third-party company build made from a mock builder who then sourced his design to a third-party company, Barweer, and yeah, so this is able to be purchased as is with all the things that come with it. The only thing that's going to be in this set that doesn't come with it that you're going to see is my Cal Kestis figure in BD1 alternative colors, because this thing doesn't actually come with any minifigures. But so us jumping into things, and I have detailed reviews of both of these ships in general, so I'm not going to go into, you know, all these kind of laying everything out and going through everything in as detailed a way as I have into the reviews, because it's hard to manage these things. But I'm going to also try to still be able to view it from different angles and jump into a few of these things as I can, even though they're very unwieldy to manage because of their size. So first off, what we're going to jump into is we're going to jump into size and scale. So I'm always big when it comes to that. And that part to me was pretty fun. So, and just interesting. So the Slave One, I'm just going to call the Slave One, even though Lego's official name for it is not of the, Star Wars official name, but Lego's official name is the Jango Fett Starship. I'm just going to call it Slave One because it's always been known as that. And obviously the Stinger Mantis. So the Slave One, its length, or in this case, because of design, because the way it's angled, it's appearing to be height. So when I say length, I'm referring to when it's laid down or the height, because obviously they're one and the same. But its length is supposed, as far as in canon, actual length in feet is 70.5 feet. Now, when it comes to Lego as a scale in terms of the studs, one stud equals 1 foot. You could kind of get this idea or measurement by taking a minifig and you lay them down across a set of studs like a tile, and what you'll find is he's just under 6 studs, but above 5 studs, which gives you the idea of that average human height. When they say 6 feet, when they use that for measurements in like books that will compare like humans to like a dinosaur or something like that, when you think of scale, and they have that little figure person in a black silhouette for scale. So essentially, the Lego minifigure is about 6 studs. His height, if you lay him down, because I know bricks are not the same as the width of, the length of studs. You would think that they are aligned the same, and they aren't. The height of a brick is taller than the length of a stud. But as far as the length of the stud as a measurement, a minifigure is roughly somewhere between 5 and some change, or close to 6 feet. So you just say 6 studs is 6 feet. So with that being said, the actual length of the Slave One is approximately 59 studs. So it's like saying 59 feet when it's supposed to be 70 feet. So it's close. It's very close in being what's known as minifig scale, meaning that the minifigure is it's within scale to the size of the minifigure. So for the most part, this Slave One is very close to minifigure scale. just shy of it if we're going off those measurements. Now, just to give kind of a level of confirmation in terms of that, some shuttles and some spaceships are going to be specifically to that length and size that they need to be exactly. A friend of mine has the Razor Crest UCS set, and I counted the studs on that, and the actual length that it's supposed to be, I forget what that is, but I know the studs, if you count up all the studs in length, it actually was that exact amount, maybe a couple studs longer, but maybe like 2 or 3 studs longer. But for the most part, it was that exact amount. So yes, that is a thing that, is done with some of these models. So this one right here goes right within around that realm. Like I said, it's roughly about 10 studs short of that. That could be attributed to just the length of the bottom piece coming out furthermore. I did measure that in the length of it. That could be, whatever the case might be. So for the most part, it's pretty on point. Now, the Stinger Mantis, and one thing I will say too with the Slave One is that Slave One, when it comes to movies and media and all that, its size seems to change. I've done a video on this before. It seems to change very quite often, where like visually it looks like it's bigger in some scenes, and other ones it looks like it's smaller in some scenes, especially when you show the interior of it, where the interior sometimes looks massive in certain shows, like like in the Mandalorian show, the interior of it looked massive, and then from the exterior it doesn't look not nearly as big as it does from the interior. Now, with that being said, the Stinger Mantis is supposed to be 100 feet. It's like 99 feet. Its actual length, at least based on what's said here on the bottom, it says 30.4 meters. It's supposed to be 99 feet in like 8 in some change inches, 8 point something inches, which we're just gonna say 100 feet. We're not gonna, count the couple of like the 4 inches off, 3.5 inches off. We're just gonna call it 100 feet. At 100 feet, this thing measures 70 studs, which equals 70 feet. So it's roughly 70%. It's easy to do the math because of the 170, 70% of the length of the actual thing. So the actual ship. So it's not as, it's a little less close, I think, in its measurement to, well, they're somewhat about the same, because 10 studs difference for something that is 70 feet versus something that's 100 feet, that's 30 studs off. I don't know the percentage total, but they seem to be almost close in their difference to their actual size, even though I think the Stinger Mantis probably is off by a little bit more, but you don't notice it that much the way it's designed and whatnot. So that is the scale. Sorry that it's taking so long. I love to ramble when it comes to these things, so bear with me and forgive me on that. But so that's just the scale of them. So they're both not exact, but they're both pretty close, where I'll give the slight edge to the Slave One in regard to that. But we're going to see later on that even with that being the case, I think you still get a lot more in terms of interior space and the vibe of you getting that completeness of it kind of will go to the Stinger Mantis. So when we come to the exterior details, I think both of them are really good when it comes to that. They're really on point. Now, this version from Barweer steps it up a notch versus the original creators, the original designers. His mock build was from Lego parts, putting them together. Barweer using their own parts, which I don't know like the name brand of the parts they use, so we're just gonna call them Barweer's parts. They end up doing printing, and that enhances the details with no stickers. So the details on this thing looks really good. I'm gonna move the Slave One slightly to the side. And it's really good because you have the printed parts on it in various places. Here you got a spot underneath, which is shown in the review video. You got here, you got the doorway, and it really looks like it's got that kind of cinder Let's see if I can zoom in and you guys can see this a little better. You got almost like that cinder effect of like, coming into the atmosphere from, space. And once you get that kind of coming into the atmosphere and things are burning up, you get that kind of cinder, waves of heat burning, and you can see the direction that it's going in. So it makes it look like it's going with the direction of that the ship is flying in, and it just appears really nice. It gives that effect. And I think that it was really cool that they did that. Instead of just making it like just a plain surface, you added that extra effect of like burning, like, like metal-ish or debris scraping against it. So I thought that was like really good. The overall, the colors, everything, the way the bricks are, everything's laid out really good. The wing on top here is really good as well in terms of the detail, which, to be honest, there was a previous older version that it wasn't as good. Then the designer updated it to be even better, more seamless. So the detail looks even better. Then Barweer, like I said, stepped it up even higher of a notch by adding the printed parts and everything like that. And even adding here, these pieces for the engine, which got even better as well. So I'm judging off of Barweer's version, which I think is slightly enhanced. In my opinion, there's some small aspects of it that is less in terms of like certain Lego parts that were, available to be used. That, for example, like this would have been the sharp edge piece that comes down a little bit more. But aside from little things like that, I think Barweer's rendition is enhanced. So the details are really good there. Now, move this over to the side a little bit, and we're gonna bring the Slave One into frame. The Slave One's details are amazing as well. Because it has a lot more, it is just part of the design of the ship, having a lot more intricacies here. That is something that, appears there. Now, it is a weak point on the ship. So when we come to the talk in regards to like the strength of the build, that is a weak point. But I think that's just part of the design of the ship in general. It's going to be weak in the area because that's just the design of the ship. You really can't make that a strong area. And I'm not saying it's going to fall. It's not. It's going to fall apart. But it's still just not a strong part of the ship. But that's just by design of the ship. I wouldn't say that's because of the designer of Lego. Now, don't mind, it's a little bit dusty, my ship. But as far as the details, they're really good. The curvature on the body of the ship is actually really good compared to the previous Slave One, which was Boba Fett's one. And so a lot of people kind of speak on that and say how it's even better. And that is something that's definitely, great. So I would say both of them are very good when it comes to the detail of the ships. They're both really kind of equal in that department. One thing I forgot to mention too, they both come with their little plaques. And I think that the Stinger Mantis did a good job in that, regardless of the fact that, it's not the exact same type of thing. But for being a third-party company, I think they did a really good job. Now, when it comes to the strength of the build, I think that the Slave One is very good in the fact that I can pick it up all the time, but I pick it up from here and it's not a problem to pick it up, hold it. It's not a big issue. I don't grab it from here. Now, obviously, there's going to be parts where you don't grab these ships from. That's no different than saying you grabbing the ship from here on that. But I do think that I would say that they're roughly about equal to the sturdiness of it. It has less weaker points on the Stinger Mantis, but at the same time, I'm not a fan of grabbing this area here. Sometimes I do by accident. You want to hold from underneath. All this from underneath is not bad either, even somewhat on the sides here. But this right here is at an angle and you can feel it like you're putting tension on it. Other than that, this is not bad either. This circular piece right here is built very sturdy. And that part of the build is amazing, especially for the articulation you get out of that. You would think that this would be just as a weak point as that because of the movement. This is so sturdy in its build that it's amazing. And that was something that in this iteration of the Stinger Mantis, because like I said, there was a previous version, the designer had came up with that in a way that it's like genius in terms of the level of design that they put into that. But anyway, when we're speaking of just strength of the build, it's very strong in many parts. The I would say that because of the design of the slave one has a little bit more weaker points. This whole piece here is, you could grab it, but I don't feel comfortable in grabbing and lifting from here. But I think you can. I think I've seen someone do it in a video before, but I wouldn't really recommend it. There's Technic brick in there, but the problem is it's plated off around it, and when you're grabbing it, you're holding onto the plates. You're not really grabbing the Technic piece, and I don't think the plates are connected to the Technic piece in such a strong way that you don't risk these plates falling off if you're holding it like that. So this, I always grab it from here with both hands, one on this side and one on the other side. But for the most part, still a sturdy build. Now, when we come, the next I'm going to jump into is interior space. Now, I'm going to go into both of these, but the first thing I'm going to really say is this, and we're going to break down each one separately. But what I'm going to first really say is this: when it comes to the interior space, the Slave one, I modified it, so it's not going to be its original. Now, I did a video on my review video, which broke down that I only added really, I want to say it was 2 pieces to the to my modification. So my modification for the most part could be done without you having extra parts. But even, and I love doing that, if I'm going to do a modification, I like to use the original parts. That way anyone can do it. So in that regard, I will slightly speak on it from a perspective of you can do this yourself, but I'm also going to speak on it from a perspective that that's not how the original design is. The only pieces that I added to it were 2 8x2 plates. That's it. And they're used to act as beds, like a bunk bed setup. Every other piece in the bunk bed setup came with it, other than just the 2x8 plates. So with that being said, I'm going to jump into the Slave one first. All right, so I'm going to pull this off here. And if you want extra detail beyond this, just check out my review video on this, where I kind of go into a little bit more aspects of it. I'm going to pull that ramp down, just maybe help with some of the lighting, even though it's not going to help by much. But I'm going to pull this out. So obviously you see that you have this as part of one of the interior detail aspects, and then this piece right here looks so great. You see the minifigures that come with it. Just a really great setup here. Now I'm gonna slide in an image of what this looks like normally, of what that interior space normally looks like. But beyond that, it was like a 2-seat. It's like a 2-seat kind of thing that faces this way, the same way that this faces when this is laying down inside there. So it faces like up like that way. It's cool, and it gives you a total of 5 spaces for people to sit. The reason why, to me, it's nothing wrong with it, but it's not giving you really interior walking space or active space for the ship. Here you could see with my custom design, like I said, this is using all the same parts that are from this set, other than the only thing that's not is, and I'm going to pull it out right here. This right here, that's my Dash Rendar custom figure that I made. He's really Han Solo with some red hair. These two black 2x8 plates, and I just used those for the bunk bed setup because it was an idea that I had from before. Everything else you see here was from this. All these parts here are from this set. Even the tile plates that are on top are from this set. And everything else you see down there is also from the set, other than these containers here. So don't mind those. That's just me throwing those in as extra. But so I'll remove them now just so you guys can visually see. But all that you see there is from that. So this is like his little workbench I made where he's working on a little gun. So like I said, from the perspective of how it normally comes with the 2 seats that would be there, and they'd be facing upwards. In this configuration of laying down, they'd be facing upwards. It's cool, but it just makes it where it's a ship that's just for the purpose of people sitting inside, and you don't get that sense of, you know, him being able to walk around the ship, Jango being able to walk around the ship and do all that kind of stuff. That's the normal perspective. From the perspective of the modification I made, like I said, you don't have this in it. You could still make one bed by laying this flat down, so you won't have a bunk bed style. You have one bed right there you could have, with using all the original pieces and no additional pieces. And you could have this layout. And by having this layout here, you know, like I said, with the original pieces, judging it on that, it becomes like a little bit better in terms of interior space because it's usable. You can have that, and that is a space where you can say, well, that's my interior. That's the interior of my ship. And, you know, like you could like have the imaginative idea that, you know, he's walking around, he's doing different things or whatever the case is. Once again, this right here would drop in. Hopefully his helmet doesn't fall off because I got it just sitting in the seat. And okay, I'm putting it in the wrong spot. There you go. And so even then you can still see that there's space down there, and obviously reaching it is hard without moving this away. But then nonetheless, once you have everything set up the way you want it, you can slide that back in, and whatever you have posed in there is not a problem. So in that regards, the interior gets better when you do that. You kind of customize it. But like I said, I'm not going to judge it based on adding extra pieces because I don't think that's fair. So just on giving it a little bit of that leeway of you gutting it out and using the parts that come with it, you can make a little interior space that actually is pretty nice and gives it a little bit extra grounds. All right, so we're going to throw this thing back in here and then move on to the Stinger Mantis. And luckily for my Dash Rendar, Cal Kestis was able to save him, and now he's going to be riding on the Stinger Mantis. Okay, so let's jump into the Stinger Mantis. We're going to take this off and see how much we could see like this, because this angle makes it a little bit tough. I may have to lift the camera up and just kind of run through it. But, you know, a little fun fact too, Dash Rendar, I did a calculation of his age. I forget exactly what it is, but during the time of Fallen Order, I think during the time of either Fallen Order or Survivor is about 5 years apart from each other. Somewhere in that range. I forget which one's which because I forgot the math right now off the top of my head. I think he's about 20 years old in one of those timelines. I forget which one it is, if it's Survivor. I think Survivor, he's like 20 years old during that time. So yes, that's interesting. And then by the time that the Shadows of the Empire storyline takes place hand in hand with almost like around New Hope or like the original trilogies, I know those are a 3-year distance, but at that point he's like about 30 something years old. So yes, he would be about like 20 maybe, because it's 9 years. Survivor is 9 years from the time of New Hope. So he's like about 20 years old in that time frame, 19, 20 years old. So that's interesting. So now he's been saved and he is running around with Cal Kestis. But I'm going to put him aside for right now. Pull Cal Kestis out. Obviously, you guys know Cal Kestis comes with the Star Destroyer set, which is currently out. But if you guys don't end up getting that soon, you won't really have access to Cal Kestis except on the third-party market or whatever the case is. So jumping into the interior of, like I said, we went over the interior of the Slave One, and it's good, but without modification, it's just for seating. Now, when we get into the interior of the Mantis here, it's really detailed. It's heavily detailed, and that's really good. And it's pretty awesome in that even though, like I said, the scaling of the ship is like 70% of the length of what it should be and a little less on point in its scale than the Slave One, along with this thing's height is a little bit off too, where like if somebody's trying to get into the doors, for example, on the side, Cal Kestis does not fit into the doors without ducking. So it's not, you know, and when it comes to scale, it's a little off in that regard. But nonetheless, once you have your figures walking around the inside, and I'll put him back on the inside just to give that kind of sense of scale. Characters is a little bit like, you know, it's somewhat tight. but it's still a lot of room. And when I say it's tight, I don't mean that it's small, but I mean it relative to the size of how it would be in the ship. It's a little bit more wider, probably, like I said, about a 30% more wider, but it's not by that much to where you still get that feel that this is accurate. You can still load it up with a bunch of figures. You know, you still put figures here into the seats. Sometimes the way you got to angle the way they're sitting might be a little off. Either you could have one on the edge here and one on the edge here, or just one in the middle. But nonetheless, it's still giving you, you know, full use of the space, which makes it feel so much more on point to its scale because you have everything that you would have in the game. So starting up in the front, there is a bit of a flaw that I had noted in the review, and that simply is this seat here has a little, give me one sec. All right, I just want to get something to point with. This right here, the seat has a little jumper piece on the bottom to elevate it because Grease, the alien whose ship, who owns it, and I shouldn't say alien because everyone in Star Wars is technically alien. Even the human people are aliens. They're not really from Earth. So, but Grease, the little four-legged short guy, his seat is normally elevated because he's shorter. The problem in Lego form is that elevation means no one can sit inside that seat because when you put the roof on top, they hit their head. So you got to actually take that piece away, that little elevation. You can't really see it from here a little bit, but you got to take those little studs, that little gray studs you see there, right there. And that creates elevation. You got to take that off so it's at the same height as that other seat. But when you do that, you now can't fit no one in these back seats, which in the game, you normally had someone in this back seat here and a seat right there. Obviously, you see the way this one is, this seat is here is properly seated. There's no room for someone to sit back there. So you lose that ability. So it becomes a visual thing where you see those seats back there, but no one can really use them because both of these front seats have to be sit properly or seated properly. So that way somebody can actually sit down. So that's one thing you kind of lose out on. And that would be fixed by that 30% size increase, but it is what it is. You see the little lounge area here with the holo table for navigating the planets. It looks really nice, curved, a nice space where, like I said, you can have people sit down. Not, like I said, the whole ship, 30% bigger would fit it properly, but nonetheless, as far as we're talking about interior space and design, the design is really good and the space is usable. So that's what makes it really good. Here you obviously have, and let me just open up both of these doors on each side just to get a little bit more lighting coming inside. You have doors on both sides, which is great. On top of that, like I said, you have a good usable spaceway area, 4 studs of studded floor, and then tile along the side. And then you have the couch. Now I did one slight modification here as well to the interior on this one, which you know, I guess you could say matches in the same vein as what I did with the Slave 1. So they kind of go point for point in that. This table I showed in the review, this table here is supposed to be 1 stud over. And with that, you would see. And so, like I was going to say, with that, with this moved over, you would see a gray panel just like that. You would see that here above the couch part. So it's supposed to emphasize that the top of the couch is gray and then the cushion coming out of it is orange in the game. But when you have that, these seats here, which are normally 3 of them, I removed one of them. Those seats right there, the orange seats, would be where you see how there's one tile space in between. That wouldn't be there, and then no one can actually sit there, and the seats become decorative, but they don't become usable. So by me moving the table over by 1 stud, yes, it covers the top of the couch, so the couch is still usable for someone to sit on the black top where you see BD1 sitting is usable for someone to sit. But the problem becomes, not the problem, but you're not getting the top accent of the couch, but in favor of now you can have people actually sit in those seats. And I removed the 3rd seat that was off to the side over here because it's not really usable. So by having the 2 and spacing them out at a decent space with a stud in between, you can actually use them now. And I kept them that same way using the original parts, the orange. So no parts have been changed in this, but it allows people to actually utilize those seats. You can also see the details right there at the little food station there. You also have the little garden, interior little garden space there. So that's nice as well for as far as the details. And the space, like I said, we have all this space that's usable. And then here you have the back room, which is supposed to sum up the back area that goes towards the engines, but you know, you couldn't really space it into the back area, so you just kind of set it right here. And this was only in the second edition of the ship, the second version of it. But you can see there, it's got a workstation, it's got his meditation circle, and it's actually got a tiny little bed in the side back there, which that was inside the game as well. But this little section right here that we're looking at was a condensed version of what normally we go through this door would be a long kind of hallway with like the bed on one side, a couple of different doors on the sides of the hallway, which you can't access. And after you get to the very end of that hallway, it's almost like a balcony where it's got a bench on it, that workbench. And then off the side of the balcony is you're looking at the engine, which is a couple feet away from you. And it's kind of like you're standing on this kind of deck or balcony or whatever overhead from the engine, which is a little bit below you and further in front of you. So those who play the game know what I'm talking about. So this condenses that section into just one smaller space, but nonetheless, it's usable space. So going back to, like I said, when it comes to the interior, this one definitely wins out in its overall interior. So just to conclude, the last thing is value. Well, before we get into that, I just want to finish by saying with the interior detail that the Slave One is one of those ships where, like I mentioned earlier in the video, that it's so a little bit wonky when it comes to what's actually fits in the interior versus like what you see in the outside. The outside looks so much different than when they do show the interior of the ship. And the only time they really show the interior of the ship, not including when you go and look at, you know, online and you Google interior of the ship, you see all these different drawing layouts and, you know, these different types of books that will show its interior layout. What's the word I'm looking for? Graphic design type of illustrations of the interior. Putting those aside, because that's not like necessarily what you're gonna see in a show, in movie, because you know, anyone can draw something and make it look lavish, but it's that really, and when you see those drawings, it makes the ship look far larger than what it actually is. When we talk about just what we've seen in actual canon video media, the only time we saw an interior was from the Mandalorian show, and in that, the interior didn't look unreasonable in size, but it definitely looked larger than when we look at the exterior and say, can that interior fit inside there? You had a full back area that was huge, this huge circular dock area of where people could stand on. It looked like the size of an interior of a room to a home. And that whole space, that room is a rotating space within the ship. At least this was the version of Boba's. Now, granted, Jango's doesn't rotate like that, but at the same time, it still should have the same physical interior space because it's still the same ship. And whether that design is different, it still should be as big, and it doesn't feel like that in the inside. With that being said, I just want to throw that in there. Now, value, when it comes to value, this is the thing where obviously with Lego, you're paying for the brand name and whatever the case is. And this is where these two divided companies come into play. As far as the ships go themselves, like I said, I think they both do a great job. They both, you know, compare well in terms of what's delivered. I think as just a display piece, they're also both really good. As far as a play piece, good play set goes too, if you want to play with it, I definitely think that the Stinger Mantis is a little more play friendly, even though there's a lot more work, because every time you bring it down off the stand, you got to adjust this wing and kind of have it in a landing position. It becomes a whole thing. You don't have to use the landing gear on it because you can just lay it on the floor without the landing gear, or they have these kind of auxiliary support pieces that came with it. And I put that inside the detail of the review video where they have a couple of just black bricks that go underneath, so that way, like when you're in the certain build phase, before you actually have the stand set up, you can just lay it on the floor and it's no problem. Now, with that being said, if you're playing with it, it's a whole process of, you want to have it in the air, you're doing the whole configuration with the wing. you could just have it where it's not like that. It's still in this landing position when you're holding it up for the flying position. But nonetheless, it's a whole process to play with it. You have to be very active, even though I do think it's still more play friendly, because I feel that though you can pick this one up and swoosh it around for the Slave One, its fragileness to me feels like you're more at risk of those wings maybe coming apart, or like sometimes like a little tile might come off because you held it in the wrong area. So in that regards, but nonetheless, they're somewhat about equal when it comes to that space. But value, coming back into value. As far as the value goes, the Slave One costs you $300, and its piece count is like 2,900 and I think something like 90 something. It's very high up there. I forget exactly what it is, but it's right there next to 3,000. I think it's just like maybe 50 bricks shy of like 3,000, or less than that of 3,000. The Stinger Mantis, this one from Barweer, has 3,007 pieces. So the piece count is pretty much right there the same. The price on this though is for $125. So 125, 126. So the price difference is huge. You're not getting the official set and you're not getting any minifigures with it, but the value of it is really there. And in that aspect, there's just no denying that the Stinger Mantis just wins in terms of value. Now, you might say, well, that, it doesn't come with minifigures. That price difference, you could then literally buy the set that Cal Kestis comes in, goes for $160. You could buy that whole set for the difference in price, which is a Star Destroyer, and you would still come in just shy underneath the price of the Slave One, and now have a Cal Kestis minifigure to go along with it, along with a not scalable to this size, but a Star Destroyer with a bunch of other characters that could end up chasing this Stinger Mantis all around in pursuit of trying to get Cal Kestis. So with that being said, the value is definitely there for this set, which, definitely I'm looking forward to them making more sets like that. Such a company like Barweer. But with that being said, you guys, that is the comparison. I hope you guys enjoyed. It's my only two UCS ships. I will call this a UCS style ship because it's not officially branded UCS by Lego, but because it's not from Lego, but nonetheless, just using that same moniker. These are my two UCS ships, and I like them both a lot. And if you guys are interested, like I said, check them out. I will put the link in the description for both of these in the description for you guys to purchase. I will, the Slave One is going to be from Amazon, and the only place you can really get the Stinger Mantis is from Barweer. Some people sell it on eBay. Don't buy it on eBay. It's like $170, the lowest, when Barweer is going to sell for $125. So get it from Barweer if you're going to get it. But anyway, you guys, as always, like, share, comment, subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next video.